So growing up in the workforce is honestly kind of a unique thing because a lot of us were expecting a lot more strict like work environments and everything, but for the most part for a lot of people, as long as you do your job efficiently at a decent pace and you're not like fucking around too much, that they're not too hard on you. But there's this term that's been on the upward rise, right? Like it's been a popular term now that's been made by the internet, and it's low key just a meme, but it's honestly kind of entertaining and a little funny. It's called being a wage slave. Now, being a wage slave is usually being a slave to the dollar by the hour, like just working a casual job while getting pennies, basically, where a lot of people don't get paid as much as other corporations or millionaires. What's also very interesting, too, is that a few years ago, I started doing math equations to kind of calculate how much money I was earning per day, because the cool thing is that my warehouse app kind of shows you how much money you're making, like a certain percentage every day, called the Anytime Day feature, which is really handy at times in case for people who need to take money out for emergencies. Now, there's a lot of people who are very terrible with this, but honestly, when I was doing the math and everything on it, also doing the ADP hourly calculator because that's the payroll my job does, I realized is that we're really not getting paid that much as I thought we did on our paychecks. Now, for example, you take my wage, which is about $20.50 an hour, and you times that by 10.5 on the ADP hourly calculator. It's around $250 before tax, but when you do after tax, they do take quite a bit out, and I noticed it's around like $161 because every week I get paid $650 to $644 on full-time hours without overtime. Find that very interesting when you divide that by 4 because I work 4 days a week. I only average around like $161 after tax. Now, it does sound like a lot for a lot of people, which it is for one day. But the problem is that how much time and hours we're putting into that just to get that much. There's some people who can do side hustles like that for way less time for a lot more. Now, it's not always easy, but it makes you wonder wow, dude, we don't really question this shit a lot where being a wage slave or anything of this might have some truth to it. Now, a lot of people have believed that modern slavery has not went away entirely. Like it's evolved into something more money hungry and driven to make it seem like we have this illusion of being free in America, but we're really not. No, obviously, we still have a lot of freedom because if we were a complete wage slave, we'd be forced to work jobs that we need to do in order to survive. Well, the system does design it that way. It's not forcing us in other ways to do it. It's basically like, hey, you got to do this, or you could do the other way too and work for yourself. Now, both are pretty hard to do in some ways, and some are not very easy to handle, but it's kind of like a pick your poison type of situation. But that term wage slave really is interesting to me. And don't get me wrong, guys, there are some jobs like that are like cheap slavery where you just kind of sign yourself up for cheap ass labor because sometimes, man, times can be very tough in order for us to survive. I find this very also unique because there's a lot of people who are willing to sign up for shit like this and not question how much they're truly making per day. Like the Dollar Tree employees, right? They're making $12.30 an hour. If you times that by 8, dude, they're not even making $100 in a whole day. I remember thinking that was a lot, right? But for 8 hours of your time, about 1/4 of a day or 1/3, and we go to bed for like after 12 hours of being awake, there's a good chance that we're actually losing a lot of time just making the bare minimal. And yes, the world is not completely about money when it comes to all hobbies and everything, but the world is unfortunately ran by money, and that's what makes things a little bit difficult to grasp. Like there's a lot of people who are willing to fucking do some side hobbies and freelance for way more than just $160 a day after tax. It does also depend on what type of work you're doing because I do know that the smarter you are with a skill, it does make things a little bit easier when it comes to money and labor because I actually have done some errands for some people and made about like $120 in like 3 hours before. Now, it was the basic shit like mowing lawns or something. It wasn't something that was really stable, but I've done it before just for a little bit of extra cash. And there's also times where I even shoveled snow as a kid for people for about like $20 for a couple hours. Now, obviously, as an adult, that's pretty bad, but for a fucking 15-year-old kid, that's not too bad, It was enough to get myself a PlayStation card, to enjoy some map packs and DLC back when, Call of Duty back in the day had map packs and shit. Obviously, there are still some map packs, but my point is that you got a bang for your buck. As the internet evolves, dude, and memes get more weird and more unique, there's times where you kind of hear shit like this more often, especially that term, get back to work wagey, because, you know, it is like fucking, you know, modern slavery for some people. But I will say, for me, I don't really hate working. It's not the most thing I want to do, like the best thing I want to do in my life, but it just depends on the projects I'm working on. And that's the problem, too, is that this system is really designed for people who are forced to work a job they really hate. And there's a lot of people that will not try to at least get out of it, or at least try to pursue something better. I honestly find it kind of a shame, you know, because there's really good things you can do within this system, even though it's really hard. The biggest problem is that some people are just not willing to learn. I'm not saying it's a perfect system, because trust me, bro, capitalism and all this shit is not perfect whatsoever. And I don't really recommend it for anyone that's in the working class, because, you know, it is designed for millionaires and corporations. But one thing that is genuinely an underrated thing about it that a lot of people don't talk is that if you are willing to at least go above and beyond crazy ass strides, it can benefit you and reward you. And that's a lot of things that a lot of people don't talk about it. And yes, you know, it could be handed to us in better ways, but it's just the sad reality is a lot of people will have to go through some crazy obstacles just to get where they need to be if they're not from a family that's like wealthy or generational wealth. Now, there are ways where you can prevent yourself from being a full-on wage slave, because what it usually means is if you're working a whole bunch of hours of the day and just not going nowhere in life with it. That's what it usually means. That's why they call it that. But yeah, there's ways where you could actually get a great paying job, you know, and make a sacrifice where you may not even need to have children or shouldn't have kids at this time right now. Because without a great paying job, and if you have children and you don't have a giant savings account, you're going to be going through a lot of financial abuse where it's going to be like fluctuating between the same numbers all the time. And trust me, I've been there before without kids, and holy fuck, it can be very frustrating sometimes. Now, obviously, I'm able to fix that finally with some good roommates from my family members and shit. But, man, it is a pain in the booty, though, when you're trying to live on your own and you just don't make enough. But you just make enough just to get by, but just not enough to save, if that makes sense. Because you be fluctuating in certain numbers all the time like crazy. It's basically fucking being at the same checkpoint in a video game over and over again. Another thing a lot of people do is that they kind of suffer now and then they kind of live later, if that makes sense. Like, there are some people who will work crazy hours full time just to have a decent savings account. If they happen to be single or don't have any children, then they'll switch over to part time and then just be able to enjoy their life a lot better that way. Personally, that's kind of the goal I want to do if I can't fully do this YouTube job full time. Like, my goal is to, you know, work on Amazon Flex eventually while saving a bunch of money. And it's not bad too, because I've also considered just doing Amazon Flex a little earlier, but just stay at the job for years instead, because realistically, to kind of get this shit off the ground, it might not need to take more than just 1 year anyway. So I thought, fuck it, might as well give it a shot if it's even worth it. And also the crazy part too is that, like, it pays a lot more in surge pay during the peak hours and everything, and as long as you're willing to work overtime, it will reward you like crazy. Unfortunately, my job right now is not giving us any mandatory overtime until July, but the cool thing is I will be working a holiday, like, just for time and a half. Now, normally I would not be happy about this, but just kind of get to where I need to be with my life, with this YouTube journey and all my dreams. It will be a good thing temporarily, because hopefully this would be the last holiday I have to work on. Even though I may not get a 4th of July this year on the actual day, we are kind of going to celebrate it a little bit early, which is going to be kind of fun, and I'm really excited for it because, man, who says you got to celebrate every single holiday on the day of? It can be a couple days before you have to go to work, and that's what a lot of people do too nowadays, just to try to get by and get where they need to be, just in order to cope with everything and able to, you know, have some fun. Anyways, everybody, what are your guys' thoughts about wage slavery? Do you guys think it's a real thing, or do you guys think it's a little ridiculous and just a dumb meme by the internet? Personally, my short answer is that wage slavery really isn't like exactly like slavery, but it really is like a funny thing to joke at. But it also is a very interesting thing to think about at the same time, because there's some hidden truths to it. That's kind of my answer. Also, guys, life update about everything is so far I've been working a lot of hours overnights, and I gotta say I'm finally getting used to it. It's really not too bad now. Like, the hours are starting to go by fast, and my sleep schedule has definitely changed, because nowadays days I'd be waking up at 2 p.m. all the time, even on my days off, and being out like a night owl. Now, I was a night owl when I was younger, but this time I'm back to like being an extreme night owl. So this isn't so bad, and I gotta say, even though it's not very good for your health in the long run, I will say too, it is a little bit better than working early shifts at times, because there's times where you can sleep in and at least enjoy yourself. But at least, you know, you don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. in the middle of the night if you're not used to it, and be super tired for about half the day until your body wakes up. It just really depends, but you know, it's like a pick your poison. Not everyone wants to work a certain amount of hours at a certain point of the day. But yeah, it's just, you know, for the temporary reason. But also they are having some shifts where they might have like a 3 to 1:30 in the morning, which sounds a lot more better than the overnights, because it can overtake your health in the long run if you're not careful. Also, everybody, due to these unfortunate circumstances with hours, I won't be doing any more booked calls, unfortunately. And I did try to give it the experiment to see how it would work. Unfortunately, not anyone's really interested in booking any calls, but for anyone I have helped, thank you all so much for the support. But yeah, for now, I'm probably not going to be doing any more booked calls, because, you know, it's just not really a thing that's been really consistent for me, unfortunately. I've tried it to get more calls, but fuck, it's really not that easy. Shit, I got to give Wylearn and BizPath credit, dude. For you guys booking calls, it takes a lot of skill, and you all are really good at it, and you guys are awesome. Both of y'all got my respect for your guys' amazing persistence with it. Anyways, everybody, I'll see y'all later, and I'll see you guys in the next one, so peace out.